All right, folks. In this installment, this will be mostly for the newer guys. Some of the older guys might be able to pick up a thing or two. But what we're going to go over with is your equipment at the shoot itself. Here we have a shooting mat. Now this is a purchase shooting mat from Midway. Honestly, the homemade one that I started out with at home, I like better than this one. I made it out of a Harbor Freight moving blanket sandwiched between two pieces of vinyl. I sewed it all together. Of course, I own a trim shop, so sewing's not a big deal for me. But this one here will work. Anything will work, keep you off the ground. Could be a tarp folded up with a pad between it, just anything. But the one thing, there's something about this I want you to keep an eye on. Look in the corners, and you see these grommets. All four corners. You have got to nail down that mat to the ground. It makes no sense to get your gun all positioned and everything and think you're in the same spot with your elbows every time if the mat's not in the same place every time. The other thing to look for, you see the marks on there, the red and kind of greenish marks. That's where my elbows go when I'm on the mat. You also see the mat itself's marked where the butt of the gun goes. There's two marks there because for two different guns I own, one of them's the red mark, the other one's the green mark. They're close enough to be okay. Now, we'll go to the chunk. Okay, the chunk. Now this chunk is not for this gun, as you can probably see, but I grabbed the wrong one. Doesn't matter. Everything about it will work, so we'll go over it. The adjuster. If you're going to make one of these, make it adjustable up and down. You can see the nut there on a piece of all thread going through. I found an old cheap wrench. I cut it off and used it in there for tightening. On this side, it's got a large wing nut. And in the rope, I made a handle. That's just a rope going through those slots. Put a large washer on, tied a knot on the end of it, and you got a handle. Up here, for the gun that this chunk's actually made for, the camp bar will set on that piece of sandpaper. I don't like things moving around while I'm shooting, and sandpaper gives it a little more grip. Underneath, pins. You have got to pin the chunk down. Just like the mat, you do not want the chunk moving around during a shoot. So you got holes in the four corners for the pins. You're going to get in some places in this country where you may want to take a set of longer pins with you. Ask anybody that's been to Round Bottom and they'll tell you about that. Now, I bought a cheap Harbor Freight level screwed on the back side there so I could see it. Make sure it's level. Doesn't make any sense to have a camp bar in your gun if your chunk ain't level. But there's a lot of ways you can do the chunk. Anybody with any minor woodworking skills can make one. If you don't want to go that deep into it, get you a block of 4x4 or a block of 6x6, a few chunks of 2x6s or 2x8s. You can stack it up and create a chunk. In the old days, they threw a log down and everybody shot off a log. Well, like a lot of things men get involved in, it soon turns into an arms race. So about everywhere you go now, you're going to need a chunk. The only place I know where you have to use what we'll call it the log is at Friendship for the Bill Large match. And you have to shoot it off of their log rest there, which is actually a railroad tie. Now, we're going back to the gun again. I will do a video later, or a piece of this video later, that shows camp bar. If you're going to be serious about chunk, you're going to want to put a camp bar on your gun. Now, in lieu of the camp bar, At all shoots I've been to, you're allowed to use a sandbag. And if you're just starting out with, say, an offhand gun, you don't want to hack it up or mar it up with a camp bar. Just use a sandbag. You'll be fine. All right. Okay, this is your board for your spotter to go on. Pretty simple, actually. I'll flip it over. It's just a piece of plywood. I put conduit clamps in the corners. You can go to Home Depot or somewhere and get these driveway markers or fiberglass. They're pointed on the end. They'll shove down most ground. If you have to have a hammer, they'll take the hammer. Here's what you got to watch for on these. You'll start getting it shot up, but you can move it around. Next time you'd use this, you'd flip it over. Your shots will be down here at the bottom. Now, when they get shot up too bad, I throw them away and start over. But you can always, on the back side of these, put a piece of, where the hole is, put a couple layers of cereal box cardboard or something like that. You want something somewhat solid behind your spot, behind your target, because if your target's put over that hole that was there, it's not going to make a clean cut when the ball goes through it. It's going to be kind of raggedy, and that makes it really hard for the scorers to give you a good, accurate score. To help them out, and actually to help yourself out, you want a crisp hole. And usually a couple layers of cereal box board or cracker box boards will take care of that for you. Here you just have a couple paper clamps to hold your target down. On this one I've got stapled at the top so you can lift it up from the bottom and put your target under there. So once again, go over it again. Piece of plywood. Doesn't have to be, this is ½ inch. Doesn't have to be ½ inch. 1/4 inch Luon's fine. Put those clamps in the corner. Slide these down through it. And you got yourself a cheap target board. You might end up with, if you find a piece of scrap wood, you might end up with $3 in it. All right, that takes care of the target board. All right, wind flags. Here's just a couple I made up. Easy to make. You can see what they are. Nothing to them. That purple one is actually an arrow shaft. A cedar shaft, and I split the ends and put the vanes in it and hung a little bit of that tape on there, and it turns in the wind real easily. Over there is another version. It's just a upright with a crossover and a piece of ticking hanging off of a swivel snap like you use in fishing. Now what you're going to get into at a lot of these shoots, you're probably going to have to put these flags right at your shooting position and maybe out by your target. You go to, I don't even think they allow you to put wind flags out downrange at the York other than right at your target. When you get that many shooters together, and if everybody puts a wind flag out there, you can rest assured somebody's wind flag is going to get shot to hell. And the worst part of that is, if that knocks your competitor's ball off his target and he gets a bad measure, he's not going to be too happy with you, and you're not going to be too happy with yourself. Like I said, I don't even think they allow wind flags between the shooting point and the target frame. But even in most places, if you got a small crowd, if you can stick them out, just be mindful of your competitors around you. You can also, during the shoot, you can watch the grass. You can watch the smoke coming off the rifles. There's a lot of things, but the wind is an important thing for you to watch, so just keep a good eye on the wind. And a couple cheap wind flags would sure help you do that. Okay. Just a few items to finish up and we'll get out of this video. Get her uploaded so people can watch it. Just give you a good view of the gun real quick. If you get into chunk guns very long, you're going to want a dedicated gun. And when I say dedicated, that usually means you got 3 or 4 of them. This lovely gun here was built by Alan Hunter for Max Egolf, and Max never got to shoot this gun. Max died before he ever got to shoot it. I was fortunate enough to get a chance to buy it, and I did. Max was a dear friend, and I don't buy guns because of what the gun is. I buy guns because who owned them. And he was a good friend. He'd been especially good to the kids up on the primitive range. And anything I could do to help his family at that point, I was more than willing to do it. So I bought the gun and generated a little cash for them. But I think, in my mind, there would be nothing larger than winning the York with a flintlock rifle. It's been done, and maybe someday I'll make a run at it myself. But I just love the look of this gun. If once you get involved with these guns and these matches for very long, you'll start hearing terms like Saudi rifle, and that's an area of Tennessee. Well, I don't know. I've never been to Saudi, but I can tell you what, I bet this is a very good reproduction of a Saudi type gun. Just a beautiful gun. Left-handed too. So the gun doesn't know who's shooting it, a right-hand or left-hand person. I can shoot it just as well as a right-hand gun. All right, guys, that's the end of the equipment for this part. The next video I make will be involving table. I put up a couple pictures of tables you can do for the shoots, and maybe a few extra things I'll run into in the meantime. We'll get those in the next video. Thanks for stopping.